It happened on a cold autumn evening. Rain was pouring down outside. I was driving away from my problems on the highway. It got dark quickly during that time, and I had already turned on the headlights, so the road was well lost in thoughts about my problems and tasks. I suddenly noticed a silhouette on the roadside. As I got closer, I clearly saw a man. Since there were no other cars on the road, I decided to help the lonely traveler. I slowed down and, opening the window a little, asked if he needed any help. I saw an attractive young man before me. He asked if I could take him to the nearest hotel. I agreed, and we continued our journey together. We drove in silence. The moon was shining in the sky, lighting our way. I knew this area well. The hotel was about half an hour's drive away. Then something strange started happening with my passenger. He began to grunt and twitch in his seat. I slowed down, started shaking him, and asked if everything was all right. He just pulled his hand away and didn't say anything. After a while, he began to stare at the moon and smile in a very strange and sneering way. It was a creepy, glazed look, and his smile resembled that of a laughing madman. I was genuinely scared. I pressed myself into my seat and sat quietly, only moving my hand under the seat, trying to find some tools or at least something for self-defense. Then my passenger turned to me and smiled, although it wasn't a smile but a beastly snarl. His teeth were not like those of an ordinary person. They resembled the fangs of a predator. He opened the car door and, with a sudden movement, jumped out into the pouring rain. Since that incident, whenever autumn arrives on similar rainy evenings, I hear a piercing howl. Recently, I moved into my own apartment. Though small, it was my own space. I was overjoyed. For the first few days, I enjoyed the silence and solitude at home. Complete freedom. But it didn't last long. Soon, I started feeling like someone was watching me from the darkness. That intense gaze filled me with primal fear. This unknown presence wasn't just frightening. I knew it brought nothing good. One night, I woke up to noises under my bed. I lay there with my eyes closed, listening intently. I prayed I was mistaken and that the sounds were coming from the neighbors or the hallway. But my hopes were crushed when I distinctly heard tapping on the parquet floor, as if small claws were scratching the wood. I couldn't even breathe. I knew this creature was aware of my presence. I heard it moving around the bed, its breath heavy and warm on my legs. I was too scared to open my eyes, terrified of what I might see. I lay there listening to it move and breathe, just existing near me. That was my first horrifying night. This continued for a few more days. Then I decided I had to find out what was visiting me at night. That night, I prepared myself I sat on my bed, wrapped in a blanket, holding the switch for my bedside lamp. It started again. I heard it slowly crawling out from under the bed, and now I could see it. I saw its shadow. Not very large, resembling a big cat or a small dog, but there was a distinct difference. It didn't move on its legs. It hovered even though I could hear the tapping of claws. Looking closer, I saw its legs. But between the body and the legs, there was a mist, as if the body was separated from the legs by this very mist. It moved around the bed, and when it reached the middle directly across from me, it turned. I saw its gaze. Its eyes didn't glow, but the look pierced straight into my soul. I was paralyzed with cold fear. My survival instinct kicked in, and I flicked the switch, turning on the light. After that, I remember nothing but dark. That was a huge mistake. That very instinct doomed me. Now I have very little time left. I can't recall what happened when our eyes met, but I know something changed. I have nothing left to lose. I know it will consume me soon. I can feel its presence within me. Its strange and frightening thoughts increasingly invade my mind. I notice its behaviors in myself. I don't know if I'll become another shadow or if it needs my body as a vessel. I know only one thing for sure. What was under my bed is not alone. These creatures are infesting our world. Number 1 rule: never, I repeat, never turn on the light when it's near. It's so good to be home. Now it's time to relax after work. I was just about to get comfortable, wrap myself in a warm blanket, turn on my favorite shows, and devour some cookies with milk. What a wonderful evening. But my euphoria was abruptly interrupted by an unexpected event. Slowly, taking my time, I walked to the door after hearing a long, piercing ring. I wasn't in a hurry to open the door. Maybe these pesky visitors would realize their presence wasn't needed and leave. All my hopes vanished the next moment when the doorbell rang again, longer than the first time, accompanied by polite knocking. When I opened the door, I saw a police officer standing there. My first thought was whether I had done something wrong. No, he wasn't there for me. Pointing to the door opposite my apartment, he said that a crime had occurred there earlier today. Specifically, a murder. A woman in her 50s lived there alone. She was very friendly and kind, not intrusive but always ready to chat when needed. Since none of the neighbors were around, they called me to be a witness. I grabbed my ID, stepped into the hallway, and closed my door behind me. I handed over my documents for them to fill out their forms. They asked me to come to the crime scene. I had often visited this cozy apartment, either to borrow something or just for a neighborly chat. Now, it resembled an anthill with people bustling around, carrying things, writing notes, and camera flashes going off. Amidst all this chaos, she lay in the center of the room on an old Soviet-era carpet. She wasn't covered. Experts were still examining her, using sticks to gather evidence, inspecting her skin for injuries. She didn't look terrifying, only the pool of blood around her head was disturbing. She lay on her stomach, her head turned towards me. I caught her gaze detached and glassy. It was hard to imagine that these eyes were once full of joy and life. Her arms were sprawled out, lying helplessly on the carpet. I think she didn't resist, or it happened very suddenly. I didn't see any injuries except for a single blow to the head. She wasn't deathly pale, her skin color seemed the same as when she was alive, apart from the head injury that caused her death. The only thing that gave away that she was dead was her gaze, just her gaze. After gathering all the necessary information, they let me go home. I said that if I remembered anything, I would call them. Probably everyone says that. Back at home, philosophical thoughts about life and death started swirling in my head. How insignificant our lives are. We live, and then, in a single moment, it all ends. That's it, the end. Nothing remains, and people will look at us and study us like museum exhibits. And we won't be able to do anything. We'll just lie there peacefully, watching everything with our empty, glassy eyes.